Welcome back to Champion News Talk Radio, brought to you by championnews.net. This is Carol Parisi, our founder, Jack Roeser, and myself have Mr. Paul McKinley. And during the break, Paul, we were talking about a lot of different things. You were talking about violence in the community and Section 3, and Jack, you were talking about unions. Paul, let's hear a little more of this history and why there is so much violence.
In 1968,
I think it's great what you're doing. You're bringing out a perspective on the problems we got. You can't understand how we got to be the most crooked and the most busted state without knowing a little bit of history of the interaction of the black community, white community, and the Democrats, Republicans.
Why is the black community not angry about this? Do they not know?
First of all, they are denied the history. And when you're denied the history, then you don't know who to be angry at. And that's why I if you notice, I haven't even left the 60s yet. In 1968, the president, which was a Republican, Nixon, came out with a rule, and it was a rule saying that the CHA residents, because Chicago had such a concentration of people that was in poverty, families broken up through the welfare structure, Nixon put a program in place saying that if any development that used the Department of Housing and Urban Affairs, if it used any of that money, then the residents who are low income, who live in the projects, and low-income people who live around the projects have an entitlement to be a part of that work and that development. In other words, only those people can get a job, contract, and opportunity. So he opened up a doorway.
They got skin in the game. They're building their own community. That's
and they
awesome.
can move out of the projects with a skill, with a vocational skill. Now, this was a federal law. Now, remember, this was so-called war on poverty. This was a federal law saying that open up the construction industry and allow these people out. Now, all of the construction work you see is federal dollars.
Right.
That means that they're up underneath the same federal guidelines. But the problem came in with the Democrats.
Why?
The so-called liberal Democrats,
right.
The problem came in with the unions.
And now, Jack,
the unions discriminated against us.
He's right. Listen, my father made doors and windows. And they sold them for years for the Ibsen Company in Chicago, and finally started the Roeser Company, a little company making doors and windows. And in those years, there weren't any blacks in the trades. I don't care whether it was plumbers or carpenters or anything else.
Right.
So the
unions kept them out.
The unions did not allow black workers to be union workers.
This is why.
And the only work that could do these work in these Section 3s were unions, because that's what the Democrats wanted.
The money, the government money came in there, and the unions,
took
for
the
whatever
jobs.
it was, with their own goofy racism, they kept the blacks out of the construction union.
And see, this is a part of the coalition. See, now we're dealing with how the violence started. Now we're going to how the violence started. What they did was, now they've started out. This is in the 70s now. We're in the 70s now.
Okay.
So Nixon, there was a protest. There was a protest in the black community where they had all the people to come out and protest the union. Nixon sent the head of the Department of Labor to instruct the unions that they must open up the union trades to African Americans specifically, and low-income people in general, because you had all kind of people that lived in the project, not just black folks.
Right, right.
So in generally, all low-income people. Well, the unions never did it. Even to this day, there's 400,000 tradesmen, only 15,000 of them are African American.
Let me
400,000.
Let me show you how deep this thing was. Martin Luther King came to Chicago and was going to have a parade here. and the mayor refused to give him a permit.
This is a Democrat.
Yeah, and he refused to give.
This wasn't no Republican. This is a Democrat deal.
Listen to this. Listen to this. It gets worse.
But I thought the Democrats are the ones that give
Just
them-
listen a
Okay,
minute. You'll
okay.
learn something here.
I always do.
You're going to learn. And and he Daley would not give him a permit. And somebody was in the news. Somebody said, "Well, you can't deny him. He was given a Nobel Prize." And you know what Daley said? "I didn't give it to him."
Oh, the boss.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's how
this is the
deep this
system.
thing was, the control that was run by the Democrats, and they made the black people a new type of slavery, and
Oh.
the Democrats did,
So
and it
now
lasts to this day.
Now you creating ghettos.
That's right.
Now our neighborhoods is turning ghettos. So now it's the 70s now. So we talking about during the 70s, Mayor Daley died in 1976. When he died, there was some jockeying. So you had Volandic.
Power.
So then you had Mayor Burns. Then in 1982 and 83, the so-called reform mayor, which was Harold Washington. Harold Washington was a part of the machine. They tried not to say, yes, he was a part. He had been in office and everything.
You know what? We're going to hear more about the Chicago machine, Harold Washington, and what's going on in your city of Chicago. Stay with us.